Alright, so in today's tutorial, we just want to go over some basics on really how to block in a face. So if you're modeling a human body and you want to kind of start to rough in the nose, the mouth, and the eyes, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So just how to get that basic shape of your face and then get some of those key elements in there. And we're really only going to do just the eyes, the mouth, and the nose in a very rough stage in this particular tutorial. So the first thing that you want to do, I've set up my scene already, and I just want to load in some reference images, some orthographic sketches, so that I can really have an idea of what I want this head to look like. So I'm going to click spacebar and go into my multi-panel views here, and I'll go to my front view first. So in my front view, I can click View, Image Plane, and Import Image. And I'll just go to my front view here and click Open. And then I will go into my side view, View, Image Plane, Import Image, and I'll select my side view here. So the only reason I was able to quickly select those is because I've already loaded them into the source images folder in my scene. So I created my project and I loaded those two JPEG images into the source images. So that way they'll automatically pop up for me. Just want to make sure everything looks okay. It looks like those are pretty centered. So it should be in good shape. All right. So I'm going to rotate this and just put it at 0 actually. -90. I just want it to face forward. For whatever reason, I like modeling going right to left. So I'm going to keep my image like that. And then I should be in pretty good shape. So I'll select this one and I'll just kind of bump these off to the side so that I have this clean viewport to work with. I turned my grid off as well. If you want to turn your grid off, it's this button up on this little top toolbar. It's the little grid. It should be highlighted blue if you've got your grid on, and if you select it, you can turn your grid off. Alright, so I just want to start with a cube. I'm going to use a cube. I'm going to extrude that cube up to form the rest of my face, and then I'll go in afterwards, add in some edge loops, and start to put some detail in there as far as the eyes and the mouth go. So I'm going to click spacebar. I'm going to work for the most part in my 4-panel views, and then I'll jump into them here and there. But I really want to make sure that I'm working with my front view and my side view at the same time so that I don't leave them out. So I want to create a cube first. So select a cube, and I'll zoom in on my front view. And I'm only going to model half of the head, and then I will just either mirror it or duplicate it afterwards. So I'm going to click 4 in my front view and just kind of get this cube lined up correctly. So that looks pretty good. And I'll go into my side view. You can see it's a little off in my side view here. So let me right click and go to my vertex mode and just move some of these vertices around a little bit here. So pull those up. I'll push those off to the side. Okay. So that looks pretty good there. And like I said, I'm only working the right side of my face. All right, so then with that done, I want to go into my face mode, select that top face, and I want to start to extrude this up. And as I do this, I'm going to try and rough in the very basic shape, but I'm only going to put a couple of edge loops as I work my way up. So I'll hold down Shift and I'll right click, and I will go to Extrude Face. And you can see that now I can pull up this kind of second batch. And then I want to make it a little bit bigger. And I just want to kind of line it up here with my scale tool to start to follow the basic shape of my face. And I'm mostly looking at this point at the back. And then, because the front, I'm going to kind of cut it to the base of the nose a little bit here. So that looks pretty good for my first one here. And then let me pull this over here. Okay, and I'll click G. And I'll start to go up a little bit more. And this time I'm also going to start to rotate it. In reality, I want to straighten this thing out as quickly as I can. So if I start to rotate it now, it should put me in pretty good shape as I start to develop the rest of the shape for the face. I'll zoom down a little bit there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And it's still fairly close with the side of my head in my front view. And all that I'm doing in my front view is just kind of roughing in this middle edge. I'll go in later and completely straighten it out. So I just want to get it roughed right now. So I'll go into here so you can see it a little closer. Click G and that'll extrude again. I'm going to go up. And this time I'll kind of rotate it so that I'm pretty much flat. And you can just eyeball it. That looks good. And start to go a little bit bigger. And right there should work. So if you want, you could also put this one kind of in the middle of the eye, but I'm going to go a little above it, and I'll just come adjust it later. And then let me go into my front view and just kind of straighten this thing out. Looks like I got to go a little bit farther here. Okay. So you can see in my front view this kind of arch that I'm following here. That's pretty close. You can see the bottom needs to be adjusted, this bottom vertice, but the rest of it is staying fairly close. And in my side view, I'm staying pretty close as well. So I'll click G. Oh, looks like I selected a different face. All right, click G. Come up a little bit more. I messed up. Hold on. Click G. Come up a little bit more here. And then I'll start to scale this in. And at this point, I'm going to start to round out the top of my head. So that looks good. Looks like it's got to go a little bit more there. Okay. Click G. Come up a little bit more. So I'll do this one, and then I'll just do one more to kind of top it off. That looks good. And just push this over a little bit. So that's close enough. And then G, and you can just pull that up the rest of the way. And then here, I'll scale that down. Line the top up. And just make sure everything looks correct in my side view as well. Okay. So that's pretty good. I'll click Q and I'll get out of my extrude tool. And you can kind of see the head shape starting to come together. It looks a little off right now, obviously, but that's okay. So with my object, I'm going to right click, go into my face mode, and I just want to delete these inside faces. I'll delete the face on the bottom of the neck as well. Okay, so that looks good. And then my next step, I want to add in a new edge loop because if you look at my top view, even if I click 3, I'm pretty squared off right now. I want to keep that round shape of the head from the beginning. So if I hold down Shift and right click, I can go to my Insert Edge Loop tool. And I'll just kind of put one in there off on the side of the head here, like that. So that orange edge is my new edge loop that I just created. And that will help me kind of round out my shape a little bit here. Because now, if I go into my vertex mode, I'll select that top vertice on the corner, and then go down to the bottom, and hold down Shift and double click, and it'll select all those vertices in the middle. And then I'll do the same thing on the back, like that. And if I click R, I can start to scale these in a little bit. and I'll push them in with W just to start to really round out that head. And that's important, that you want to start doing that early on so that you don't have to worry about having a squared off head later. So now I'll select these vertices. So I'm in my top view and I'm just going to kind of clean up those top vertices a little bit here. Okay. So that looks pretty good. And with this, now we can start to go in and start to block in some other little shapes on my model. So I'll work with the mouth first. And like I said, we're going to do very, very basic blocking for this stuff. So it's not even really going to look like my human at this point. That's okay, because I just want to start to get this geometry in there and this topology nice and clean and economical. So it looks pretty good right now. It's pretty rounded out. So when I was putting together my edge loops, you can see I tried to line up this front edge here with my mouth, but I went a little above it. So this is the edge that I want to start working with for my mouth. So I'm just going to drop it down a little bit. So in my vertex mode, I'm going to select it and I'll just kind of bring this down here like that. And make sure I'm just kind of roughly adjusting some of the other vertices on that edge loop if I need to. Okay. And now I want to just start to cut in the mouth. So I'm going to add in one more edge loop as well, which is going to sit in between the eye and the mouth. So I'll just plug it in there, right there. Okay. So if you have your modeling toolkit open, in here, I'm going to use the multi-cut tool quite a bit, but it's up to you if you want to use that for the modeling toolkit or not. I'm not going to use the modeling toolkit myself, but it's up to you. So I want to cut this mouth shape out a little bit here. So I'm going to hold down Shift, right click, and go to this multi-cut tool. And I'm just going to roughly plug in a triangle like this, which will start to act as a mouth. So you can see that I roughed it in kind of roughly where that mouth shape was starting to take place already. And if I go grab this front vertice, I can drag that down a little bit here too. All right, so what we've done is we've actually created, if you look closely, a five-sided polygon right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have a five-sided polygon on the bottom, and then we have two triangles which are currently acting as that mouth. So I want to make everything quads. I want to continue to only work really in quads. So in order to fix this first issue, I'm going to hold down Shift and go back to my multi-cut tool, and I'm going to make a first cut right in the middle of that triangle. And I'm going to go up to the corner of that other face. And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. And now if I go into my perspective view, you can start to see that I've got my quads back. So I've got a quad here, 1, 2, 3, 4, a quad here, a quad here, and here. Because if I go to my vertex mode, you can see those new vertices that I plugged in, which are helping. So this will come down a little bit here. So that's a good thing. And then if I need to add in some more detail around my mouth, what's nice with having all quads is if I do Shift and insert edge loop, I can just insert in new edge loops now, which wrap right around that mouth. So if I wanted to enter another one in there, I can. And all that that's going to do is it's going to give me some more flexibility when it comes to actually modeling in this mouth. So let me go into my side view and you can kind of see we're going to have some issues here. So this vertice that I've got selected should actually be the corner of the mouth. And if I click 4, you can see the corner of the mouth is pushed back a little bit. So I'm going to push this first vertice back, and then I want to grab those two right here, which are going to act as the corner of my mouth, and I want to push them back so that they match up here. And then if I zoom in, I can kind of start to shape some of these other little areas out as well. And this is why it's important to work not only in your perspective view, but in your side view and your front view as well, so that you can catch some of these little details. So let me pull that up here. Okay. So now you can see it's starting to actually take some shape, which is nice. And if I wanted to add in another edge loop, I could. And all that will allow me to do is now go back to my side view, go to my vertex mode, and really start to just block this in even more. So the couple of edge loops that I'm going to create for this tutorial are not going to be enough to get your exact shape. You're going to need to create some more after we kind of run through the tutorial, just so you can really get this full design created. Pull those ones up a little bit. All right. And what's important when you're doing this is that you're keeping a nice edge flow in those edge loops. So if I'm moving one vertex, that does mean I should be moving some of the other ones as well, so that we can keep everything nice and clean. All right, so that looks good there. And it's starting to come along. Still obviously needs some work, but we'll get back to it. I'll go to my front view real quick and just double check anything small here. So you can see in my front view, I'm pretty off with where I have some of these. So I'm going to pull this one in here, pull that in, because I do want to follow my orthographic sketches here. Oops. So I'm just going to go pull that one in here. Okay. Adjust some of these front ones too. Alright. So that looks pretty good. That'll act nice and clean for right now for the mouth. And now I want to go in and I want to start to build in this eye. So I'm going to pull this vertice, which I had created to kind of split things up. I want to pull it down a little bit because I'm going to actually have this more just wrap with the mouth, and same with this other one over here. And then I'm going to create a new edge loop, which will start to act and cut up where my eye is going to go. So I'm just going to plug one right here for right now. Right about there. And let me just fix this vertex. I'm going to plug it at the bottom of the nose. So that looks good. You can see as I'm going about it, I'm also going to go adjust the vertices along the other spots of my head. All right. So we've got the mouth kind of roughed in here. And now we want to put the eye in, which means I'll probably need to make one more cut for where I want the eye to actually be. So I click 4. I can see my wireframe here. So I do have an edge loop right here. It's a little underneath, and that's the one that's going to cut up my nose and my eye. So I'm going to leave that one alone. And then I'll cut another edge loop right in the middle of my eye. So that looks pretty good there. Okay. All right. And then I'll cut one more that kind of comes down as well, that cuts my eye vertically. So right about here, and you can see that new edge loop that I just created. I think I deleted my other one on accident. So it should be right about there. Okay. So now this vertice right here is kind of sitting in the middle of my eye. If you see it right here, sitting pretty close, and that's what I want. That'll work fine for me. Let me go back to my perspective view, because you'll also notice that when we went in and cut this edge loop that comes down vertically, the other thing that we did is added in another edge loop and more vertices for my mouth. So I actually have some more detail that I can play with on my mouth now. So I'm just going to go rough that in real quick too. And this will change a lot once we go in and actually add in detail. But I just want to continue to keep my shape going, so if I make a little change, I just want to make sure I'm staying updated with everything else. Okay, so that looks good there, and let me just go to my side view and start to rough that in here as well, and just space this stuff out a little bit here. So the more vertices you have, the more opportunity for detail. But you do want to be careful with that, because more is not always better when it comes to 3D modeling. So just be aware as you're adding in edge loops, and just make sure that there's something that you actually need. Come out a little bit here. Okay. So that looks pretty good. All right. So if I click 3, you can see it's starting to smooth out a little bit, and this is looking pretty clean for right now. All right, so now we want to use our multi-cut tool again, and I want to figure out where I need to cut this next little triangle. So it looks like it's going to be right up here, like this. And I'm going to cut a diamond out, just like that. And what this diamond is going to do is act as kind of the starting point for my eye. So now I want to go in and I want to get rid of those triangles and quads, just like I did before, or triangles and 5-sided polygons. And in order to do that, I want to go back to my multi-cut tool, and I just want to cut this gap on each one. Okay. So you're always going to put the first vertice in the middle of that back edge for your triangle, and then go up to the vertice and the edge on that opposite face. So it looks a little weird right now, but what we can do is click 4 and go in and start to rough in exactly where some of these are supposed to be. So this vertice I'll pull up there, and then I'll go up here, and you can kind of start to form this basic shape of the eye. And I'm only going to work really in my front view for right now, and then I'll go to my side view soonish. Come this way, because this one needs to go out here, and then up like that. Okay. So you can see that this one has some weird issues going on, but that's okay, because we are just blocking all of this in. So you can see in my perspective view now that I've at least got this very rough eye shape created. And it does match up where it's supposed to go according to my front view. So if I go into my front view, you can see that's pretty close with my eye. Looks like I got to adjust a vertice real quick for the bottom. So I'll just come over here. Okay. And if I want to go in and add in my edge loops, I can, which is another nice thing about kind of modeling this way as well. So I will go to my object mode, insert edge loop tool, and I can add in different edge loops here, which will wrap around the eyeball. The eyes on this character are pretty strange, as you can kind of tell, and that's okay, because that's just what the sketches are. So I'm going to go to my side view, and I want to start to rough in this eye a little bit. So if I click 4, you can see how off this eye really is. In reality, those faces that I first created for my eye right there should be pushed back because they should be in my actual eyeball. Right now, nothing is actually in the correct spot according to my side view. So in my vertex mode, I'm going to start to pull this geometry back a little bit so that I can really start to make this eye. Come back here. So this one here should be in this corner. And then it should kind of work its way down. And I'm just going to continue to go through this and figure out exactly where these are supposed to go. So this one should be really up in this top corner. This one's got to go down in there. Okay. And we're just going to rough these in. Okay. So now what's nice is that I've moved those back and they look correct according to my side view for the most part. And they should still look pretty good in my front view as well, which is important. I'm just trying to center everything a little bit more. Okay. So here you can see that the eye is actually now being pushed back a little bit. And you're starting to see that little bump that kind of comes underneath your eye. That's a good thing because that's detail that we were going to have to add in eventually anyways. And we're just kind of roughly starting to get it already by moving these vertices in my side view here. Okay. So in my side view again, I'm just going to clean up some of these other ones as well. So it's not going to be perfect because I do not have nearly enough geometry in this scene yet. I'm going to need a lot more, but it'll kind of come as we continue to go through and model this thing out. So we'll kind of keep it like that. So I can also, if I need to, start to go in and block other parts of the body. I just want to stay consistent with it. So if I want to move these up a little bit here. Okay. And then like the mouth, if I want to go add another edge loop in here, just to continue the amount of detail that I'm going to have, I can. So that'll go over there. This will come up. This should come down. Okay. So that's looking okay. And if I want to, I could potentially take this eye, and that's where the actual eyeball would go. Could extrude it. I'll center that, and I could start to push this back a little bit too. So I'll just go a little bit there. click G, center that, go a little bit more, and then I'm going to start to build this out a little bit here. Just want to make sure you're not going to cut through the rest of the model at any point. Okay, and then I'll just go G one more time, push it back a little bit more. And here, if I click R and grab this front vertice, I can go in and I can start to straighten this thing out a little bit. Just so that I can kind of delete this back edge. So if I select this left kind of corner of vertices, click R, and with my scale tool, just pull them all together. It'll actually straighten those vertices out, and that should help quite a bit. And then you can do it up on the top. And in the middle, click R, and then on the bottom, click R. So now I've got a shape that's a little cleaner. Go in a little bit there. I don't want to go that far. There we go. Click G. Let's go back one more. Blow this up a little bit here. And I'll just delete it. So I would definitely need to go in and change that back part. That's not looking too great, to be honest with you. But when an eyeball is plugged in there, it'll be a little bit different. So I could actually probably go and delete a lot of these faces if I wanted to. I didn't need as many as I created. So I'll just do that since I started it. Okay. So that's better. You could probably just stop after a couple that go in, and then we'll have to make our tweaks if we were to actually plug an eyeball in there. Oh, looks like I deleted this other face on accident. So if you do that, you can always fix that as well. If you select two of the edges which are kind of parallel to each other, hold down Shift and right click and just go to Bridge. It'll just connect that again for you. So there's my rough eyeball. And you can see the rough mouth which is in here. Let's go make a couple more tweaks to the mouth before we then look at the nose. So I am going to add another edge loop in. So I hold down Shift to right click. I want to add another loop in to kind of act as the top corner of my mouth here. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. I'm going to go to my front view. And I'll come down, click W. And what I'm going to do here is just start to space these out a little bit differently so that they're more like this. And the reason for this is because in the corner of my mouth, that's obviously an area that's going to move a lot, right? If your character's talking or really making any type of facial expression, their mouth needs to open and close. By just simply splitting that up one more time and adding in this extra edge loop right here, that's going to allow me to have that quad in the corner, which will be deforming rather than just a straight triangle. And that's going to help me a lot. And then I've just got some more vertices I can go in if I want to go make some detail to the character as well, which is always a good thing because we're super low poly right now. Go like that and just start to block in some of the other spots on this head. Okay, so you can see if I were to go to my back, there's a lot of vertices right here. I would want to go kind of space those out and clean those. I'm not going to do that in this tutorial, but just keep that in mind that is probably an area you would need to go adjust due to the amount of vertices that we now have over there. All right, so I'm getting a little away from myself here, but it bothers me when all these other vertices are kind of running around. Okay, so if I click 3, go into my perspective view, you can see a little bit of what this guy is starting to look like. Doesn't look great, but he is starting to at least get some shape. Down near his mouth, it's a little bit cleaner, so he'd actually be able to talk and be deformed correctly in there now, which is important. Okay. So then I want to create the inside of my mouth as well. So I want to just find the correct vertices for that. So let me go into my front view. And what I'm going to do is create the inside by pushing some of these vertices back a little bit here. So these should actually be over here because that's this edge loop. And then what I want to grab is this one, and all of those. So it's really just going to be whatever acts as the inside of the mouth. I've got them selected. I'm going to hold down Shift, right click, and Extrude Face. Center that, and I'll push that straight back. And once I get it pushed back a little bit, click Q. I'll delete those inside faces here. So the ones that would be mirrored and then get duplicated, I'll delete. And then I will select all of those outside vertices that I just started to extrude with. Oop. Okay, so it looks like it's just those. Click R, and then with my little manipulator, I can just scale those and bring those all together. And now I've got this new shape, which should work pretty well, to bring back and start to create the inside of my mouth. So if your character was talking and you ever had a shot where we're going to see the inside of their mouth, you want that to be a clean area. So with these interfaces selected now, I'm going to actually scale them a little bit here and pull them back. So what's nice with how I did it is I just kind of went and I made my adjustment, and now I can go tweak everything else. So I'll click G, push them back a little bit more, and now I'll start to scale this up a little bit here. Click G, center it, and then just push all the way back. Click G, and go all the way back again. And then here, I'll kind of stop, and I want to start to turn this down a little bit so that it starts to aim down the throat. Click G, and I will aim this down a little bit more. And I will also go in and start to scale it. Okay, so I'll do one more. Click G, scale this down here, just so it's completely hidden at this point. And then if I were to model a tongue, I would be able to put that tongue right inside of this kind of inner part of the throat that we just modeled, and it would work really nice. So I need to go in and delete all those inside faces. Click delete. Looks like I got 3 up front still. Okay. So that's working pretty well, and you can kind of see what the inside of the mouth is looking like. I probably want to go in and adjust this first one a little bit here. And I can just start to rough that in if I need to as well. Like that. Because if the mouth opens, you want it to just be nice and clean inside of there. Okay. So, now I've got the inside of my mouth created. I've got my eye pushed in and deleted. And I've got some really basic shapes as far as where my mouth goes. So if I click 3, my mouth at this point completely loses its shape from where it needs to be. So now that I went and I created that inside, I also want to go adjust these other vertices real quick, just so that my mouth actually closes. So I'll just kind of bring those up, bring some of these down, and just reshape that area a little bit where it needs to be reshaped. Okay. And all these little details you'll go back in and you'll really have time to tweak at the end. The most important thing for me is to just get this basic shape in. So that should at least work a little bit better. You can see the mouth is still open. That's because I just don't have enough edge loops in there. In reality, I'm going to need to go add quite a few more edge loops in order to get this thing really working. But that's not something that I will be looking at right now. Okay. So we've got a mouth roughed in, we've got our eye roughed in. The geometry is not looking too bad around the rest of the face. You can see it's a little jumbled up back here, but that's an area I could just go tweak later and make my changes to. So the next step is going to be to just add in the nose. So I'm going to add another edge loop, and I'm going to do it right in the middle here, like that. So I'm going to do it in the middle so that I can start to cut where my nose is going to come from. So that works there. And then, like anything else, at this point you'd want to go in and start to tweak that new edge loop that you just got, because now it's now more detail that you have in order to rough in the rest of the face. But I won't spend a ton of time on that right now. Okay. All right. So then with my nose, I'm going to take this top vertice and kind of plug it at the top of where I want my nose to start from. And then you can kind of see where the bottom's going to be here. Okay. Then I'm going to select this face right here, and you can see that this is kind of lined up with where I want my nose to be. Obviously I need to work the vertices around a little bit still, but it's fairly close. So if I select it and do shift right click and extrude it, all that I'm going to do first is just kind of scale it in a little bit here. And then I'm going to go select this face over on the left. So I just extruded it, I scaled it down, and now over on the left, I'm going to delete that face so that I've got these new vertices, which can just be pushed over to the edge. And you can see we can start to block in our nose now. So I mentioned earlier that I want to straighten out those inside vertices. This is a good time to do it before we start to do the nose. So in my front view, in order to do that, all I have to do is go to my vertex mode, drag this bounding box right over the inside vertices here, click R, and then just grab this handle and pull it in. And they'll all move. Okay. So now I will select this face, which is where I want my nose to come out of. Hold down shift, right click, and extrude it out a little bit here. And I'll just kind of bring it out all the way. It's going to look really weird, but that's okay because we'll be able to go in and make our changes to it. So I'll get it out to there. I'll just get off of that for a second. And you can kind of see it's got this little button look right now. Take this inside face out. And now I can start to go in and move some of those vertices around a little bit. So I'm going to pull this one down here. I'll pull these two down. And then this one here. This one here. And I'm just kind of starting to shape in where I think my nose is about going to go. You can kind of see what's starting to happen. And the nose will look pretty weird at the beginning. The nose will take a little finesse in order to really shape. But once I get some of the generals in there, I can go select this bottom face here. And this I know is where my nostril is going to be. So if I hold shift and right click, go to extrude face, I can start to block in my nostril just by scaling that down, clicking G, and pushing it up like that. And then I'll scale that down too. Okay. So at least now we've got this really, really rough shape in there. And if I go to my side view, I can start to adjust what this is really looking like a little bit here. And what I would need to do is go add in a bunch of other edge loops to really get this detail in there as well. Because that's just what's missing. And that's what's going to be missing on all of these elements at this point. It's just those extra edge loops. And with every extra edge loop, you can get a little bit more detail in your character until you're really starting to get that shape that you're looking for. So you can see with the nose, it's already starting to come together a little bit nicer. Just from those two little extrudes. So I would need to go add in a little bit more with the nostril and then add a little more depth to it. But it's starting to work at least now and makes a little bit of sense as to what we're going for. Pull that out. Okay. So at this point, you can kind of see the rough idea of what we're going for. Obviously, a ton of tweaks would still need to be made. The first thing I would probably do next is to go in and start to clean up the rest of the geometry and actually get the head shape in the right way. You can see my chin is a little messed up here at this point. So I'd want to go fix the chin, obviously, add some more edge loops in down there so that I can get that shape. And then also the top of the head I didn't really do much with at all at this point. So I would need to go add in probably some edge loops in there to get the top of the head working. But like I said, the most important thing here is to just make sure that you're keeping that really clean edge flow. If you are, you'll be in good shape kind of moving forward as you start to add in all those other details with your model. And the other important thing is to just make sure that you're continuously rounding out your model as well. You never want to get to a point where the model starts to get squared off because that'll only add time later trying to go in and clean everything out. So you can see I'm really just roughly going in here and figuring out where some of these vertices should actually be. So some of these should probably be in more just to give it a little more freedom in between edge loops. And so forth. It's pretty rough in the back and it's pretty rough in a couple of the other sides, but that's okay for this tutorial here. So if I were to just say, oh, okay, well that's exactly what I'm looking for at this point, at least if I go into my perspective view, we've got a spot where I can start to put an eyeball in and then kind of mold the rest of the face around there. I've got a very rough start to a mouth and a nose, which are able to just give me some rough shape. But what's most important and why I like modeling this way is because I can go in and I can add edge loops around any of these objects and really get some more detail. So if I needed to add more edge loops around my nose, I could. If I needed to add more edge loops around my mouth, I still can. and then I can do the same thing around my eye. And having that type of flexibility and freedom is really important in something that I'd push you guys to work towards. Okay, so that's all that this tutorial will be. I'll kind of cut it here, so I would recommend if you are at this point going in and starting to really clean up the model and adding in some more detail. I'm not going to bore you by doing that myself, but you kind of get the point. You just want to make sure that your edge flow is working a little bit cleaner. If you ever just want to completely straighten something out, you can select all of the vertices in that edge, click R, and then just scale them down or something. And that'll at least start to straighten things out for you again. But it's completely up to you. So go in, start to add in some more edge loops where you feel like you need them, and start to mold in and shape the rest of this face.